Today, I have the honor of interviewing one of my favorite mental health advocates, Jennifer Marshall. She's a wife and a mother of two children. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 2006 and experienced a postpartum psychosis episode in 2008 after the birth of her first child. In this interview, you will discover how her experience of mental illness led her to a wonderful life of storytelling. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Genevieve.
How are you doing?
I'm great. It's so good to be on and seeing you again. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. I think it was 2015 because it was during my second maternity leave when I went to This Is My Brave show. So I think it was in 2015.
Yeah, it's so good to see you again.
Yes, thank you for accepting to do this interview with me.
Of course.
Yes. So we're going to talk. I know that you have a wonderful life, many projects on. But since my YouTube channel is aiming to talk more about the postpartum period, like we're going to talk about your experience in your postpartum and as well what it led to, because it led to a wonderful life of storytelling.
Yeah.
So first, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a wife and mother of two children. I live in Ashburn, Virginia, which is about 40 minutes outside Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm passionate about mental health awareness because I think more people need to be talking about it to make a change and make it more, you know, make it okay to seek help. It's always okay to seek help, but I think people get afraid to reach out because they don't want to be judged and they don't want to be discriminated upon. But when we tell our stories, it gives other people hope who are in a rough spot like I was, many years ago. So.
Thank you. So, as I said in the introduction, you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 2006. And then with the birth of your first child, you went through a psychotic episode. So we know now that women with bipolar disorder have a higher risk of developing a postpartum psychosis. So were you aware of that risk when you were pregnant?
A little bit. So I had two manic episodes in 1 month back in 2005, in December of 2005. So when that happened, I was married. We were newly married, and we got through it. It led to then a year of clinical depression because I had a lot of trouble coming to terms with my diagnosis, and I had to quit my job to focus on getting well, and I felt like I lost a piece of myself. And so I got really down and struggled for a long, hard year. And then I finally tried a new medicine that ended up being the right medicine for me. And then after a year of stability on that, my husband and I wanted to have children. And my doctor did warn me that a psychotic episode could happen. But actually, when she did that, it was kind of her way of telling me that to me felt like it was telling me I was going to fail as a mother, that she was basically saying, we need to be prepared in case you have a manic episode. And I just felt the negativity, and because I had actually gone through my first pregnancy unmedicated. I didn't take my medicine. I really was worried about what it could do to the baby. But there's risks and benefits of anything when when you have a condition and you want to have a child. So at the time I thought that it would be best to not be on the medicine. Well, I had a great pregnancy, but then 4 weeks postpartum, I had postpartum psychosis because I was trying to breastfeed. I was not sleeping very much at all. And it was just really a stressful time. I think when any woman has a baby, when anyone has a baby, it turns your world upside down for a little bit. And right? I mean, it's a shock. And I wanted to do what was best for him. So I wanted to breastfeed because that's what all the magazines tell you. All my friends breastfed their babies, and I thought that that was the best and only way. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to be successful at that, which led to no sleeping, lots of stress, and that episode. So I had to be hospitalized actually against my will because they call it in the US involuntarily hospitalized. Um, and I went back on my medicine. And so I had to stop breastfeeding, which was fine in the end. It was not as big a deal as I made it out to be. And so yeah, I knew of the risk. I didn't listen to my doctors, and women reach out to me and ask about having a child, even though they have bipolar. You can do it. You just need to work closely with your doctor, and you also need to have a support system around you. My husband was there. My sister-in-law helped out when the babies were really young, because then 2 years later I had another child, um, and during that pregnancy, I actually had very early in the pregnancy had a psychosis episode, go into the hospital. So, when you have a strong support system, you can get through it. But it is important to listen to the doctors. They do know what they're talking about. And as moms, we think we always know what's best. And just as strong women, we feel like we know what is best. But you really should do all your research and take everything into consideration. And also, so my first pregnancy, I was not on medication. But when my second pregnancy came about, a couple years later, I said I would take the medicine during the pregnancy because once you got past the first trimester, there was not much of a risk on the medicine I take. And so I had that plan to be on it, and it just happened that I got sick when I was only 5 weeks pregnant. So I had to go into the hospital, and they had to put me on, different medicines, and they controlled my symptoms. They brought me back to my baseline, and then I ended up taking medicine the rest of that pregnancy, and they just watched her closely. I was seen by a high risk OBGYN, and she was born healthy, and I didn't breastfeed, and it was fine. And you get a little more sleep. And so no, it was good. And they don't know a lot about, what, I mean, there definitely are medicines that are fine, but there hasn't been enough research. So actually during my second pregnancy, I joined a research study through in Boston, the University of, Massachusetts General Hospital, to study women who were taking atypical antipsychotics during pregnancy. Because if you don't contribute to the research, they're never going to be able to understand the risks and everything. So I contributed all my medical files to that study. And then I also joined a separate study they were doing on postpartum psychosis, which was what I had after my first pregnancy. And you have to give a saliva sample, and they study everything to see, try to find out the genetic risk, I guess. And so it'll be interesting. I think we have a long way to go with the research, but there are studies out there, and I urge any women out there who hear this podcast and are able to look into it, to look up Mass General Hospital and their study, and contribute. Even if you don't have a mental illness, they still need controls for the study, so you can contribute your info, and you can help further research.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the support that you got. Can you tell us a little bit more? Like, what was the most helpful during your recovery, like from postpartum psychosis?
I think the most helpful thing was that we all talked as a family, and we talked about what I needed and what was really important. And that was that I got a good sleep, good quality sleep. And so, the baby was still very young at the time. He was only a month old after my postpartum psychosis. So we, they get up all hours of the night. So we tried to get him on a good feeding schedule, but the middle of the night feeding at like 2 a.m. or whatever, my husband would take that feeding. And something as simple as that made such a big difference when you can get 6 or 7 straight hours of sleep. And And so that was crucial. And I'm trying to think what else. Also, just being able to talk about it. That's, we had a little bit of a hard time back then. Nowadays, it's a lot easier for me to talk about it because I think the more you talk about it, the easier it gets.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want, to talk about it so my family would listen, and I found support groups too, which were helpful.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, what you say is also what I did experience as well. And my husband was getting up in the night after came back from hospital after my hospitalization. He would take a feed at night, and then yes, like my sister-in-law came, and then support group was very helpful for me. Like not necessarily support group with women that had a postpartum mood disorder. It was like just a mommy and me kind of group of moms, but I felt comfortable opening up about what happened to me and no judging. Like I realized the other moms were not judging. They were listening, asking questions, but we created a great relationship that I really think that it helped me to like recover. Yeah, I saw hope and I saw, hey, you know what? Like they're not judging me, so that's fine. And yeah, it's really helpful.
I agree.
Oh, yes. So in the second postpartum period, you didn't have to be hospitalized. So I guess you got ready, like you prepare more to make sure it would not happen.
Yes, I mean we got all the bottle feeding supplies, so all the bottles, and we got formula. I was really lucky that my daughter, just was fine on any formula, so we just bought generic baby formula, and that was very convenient, and other people could help feed the baby. So like if my sister-in-law came over in the afternoon, she could feed her and I could take a nap. And so my family was super, super supportive, which was great.
Great. So in 2011, like when your second child was a little bit young, you started a blog called Bipolar Mom Life. So you first decided to write okay, that word in English. Anonymously, yes, yeah. Because you fear the stigma people with bipolar disorder can experience. So what made you change your mind? Because you did change your mind while writing your blog. So what happened to change your mind?
Yeah, I wrote for a year and a half, and it was, my family was worried if I ever wanted to go back to work, if people might judge me for having this condition. So they said, just write anonymously. And I did. And then an editor from the parenting book, What to Expect When You're Expecting, a very popular book for moms, they had a mom blog section and they paid their writers. And she said, I saw what you're writing about and I think it's really important and we'd like you to write for us. And so I said, great. And they paid me on a regular basis. I would write, an article or two a month. And it was really all centered around being a mom who lived with bipolar disorder and had a couple kids and how do I manage everything. And she gave me a lot of freedom, that editor, to write on different topics. And it was great. And at that time, I was like, I'm being recognized for writing about this difficult topic and I want to put my name on it. And I'm proud of my life. And, even though I live with this condition, it doesn't control me. It doesn't define me. I still can have a great life and I want to talk about it. So they published an article with my real name and all these people supported me. And there wasn't any negativity that I was afraid of. It was all positive. And so that led to my organization.
Yeah. Yes. So your organization, I want to go and talk to that about that. But first, before we talk about your organization, it had a big impact what you went through, like your mental illness. And I'm wondering, how about your husband? How did that impact him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a very quiet person in general. I mean, he's just very even keeled and patient and just, he went through a lot. I mean, it's scary when your spouse sees you in that kind of state where, your mind isn't working properly. And so it was scary for him. And looking back, I wish we would have done some therapy back then, but we just didn't. We talked through it ourselves, and You know, and I'm lucky that I bounced back quickly after these episodes. Not a lot of people, some people do, some people don't, and I was just one of the lucky ones. And so we got through it. We do therapy now, though, and it helps a lot to talk about it with a professional. And so we're working through things in that sense of talking about it when we should have, but we're talking about it now. So it's a challenge, but he just always was supportive, which was super. I was very lucky. So
yeah. Well, I think it's similar in my situation as well. It was hard for him, and he got emotional, and he had a good friend he could talk to, so that helped. We were open about it. Like, we decided early on that we would talk about it to friends, closer friends, and family. So yes, it was hard, but like you, I was lucky because my recovery didn't last super long. Like, within, I don't know, I got out of the hospital, I would say maybe a month or 2 months after I felt better. Unfortunately, I went through depression after, because it was a manic episode with psychotic symptoms. And then after, I went through depression a few months after. So it was like feeling bad and then feeling better, and then whoops, all of a sudden, like, going down. But we caught it on time. So it was not like a severe depression. So the psychiatrist put me on medication, antidepressant, right away. And then, well, not right away, but when I went to see him and say, hey, something is wrong. And so, and that recovery was not long as well. So it helped. But we were able to talk about it. But yeah, it was hard for him, especially because also we just had moved to Ontario. Like, I was from Quebec. When we got married, I moved to Ontario. So we didn't have a lot of friends around. So yes, family helped. The support was mostly family. My mom came, my sister-in-law came, and then a few friends around that we just had started hanging out with helped a little bit. But yes, I was lucky in my recovery. Yeah. And then for the second one, we were ready. Like, my husband was a great support too. Like, we put some measure in place to make sure that it will be fine. And yeah, I had a great time the second time. Yeah, that's good. So what I wanted to talk is just talk a little bit about it. All of this led you to launch a wonderful nonprofit called This Is My Brave in 2013. This Is My Brave provides a platform for people living with mental illness to share their story life on the stage through songs, art, poetry. So I was reading through your blog, like, my Bipolar Mom Life, and one sentence that you share on there, like, struck with me. You said, the magic behind This Is My Brave is the life-saving power of storytelling. You talked about it a little bit like before, but can you talk a bit more about that? Why you say that?
Yeah. Well, I say that because I've seen, like, people who, well, what had happened to me when I told my story, people, instead of going away from me and, ignoring me or not talking to me or shunning me, they rushed towards me and they would say thank you, and they would tell me their story, and whether it was themselves living with mental illness or their family member. And so when we're able to open up, others open up in turn, and it's just a more accepting community. And that's what I want. I want our world to change in that way of, when someone has cancer, the first thing you do is reach out and say, when can I bring a meal over, or what can I do to help? Can I help drive you home from the hospital, or whatever you need from your treatments? But when people come home from a psychiatric hospitalization, nothing, and so we're just scared to talk about it. But I think that's shifting, and I think the more people that are out there, like you and I, telling our stories, other people feel invited to also share and feel comfortable telling their stories too. And then it just it can save a life, because when they're in their darkest moment and they're feeling so isolated and so alone and scared of the future, if they see a story from someone who has gone through it and has made it out, they can find hope in that story. And that's what helped me keep going because I had one point where I was suicidal and I
Mm.
never acted on anything, but I definitely felt that hopelessness of I don't want to be here anymore. And, you know, when I found stories from other women who had gone through these issues, I felt I felt connected and I felt like they could get through it, I can too. So, and that's what I want to put out there.
Mm-hmm. So this show is, well, I mean, this project or this organ is very big now. So can you talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I mean, you and your husband were one of the first supporters back when we did the Kickstarter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now it's 2013, and then the next year we became a nonprofit. And so you came in the second year because the first year it was, I think, 2014, you couldn't make it.
No, we did it. So we went to the show twice.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so we went to the first show, and then the second year we went as well. Yeah.
Okay, we got the picture the second year because I don't
Yeah.
remember
Yes.
us getting a picture the first year. But yeah, and so every year after that first year, it just goes to more cities and we grow. And so far, we've done 59 shows across the US, and we have a branch in Australia that also does
Wow.
shows over there. Yeah, and someday I hope we get to Canada, so we'll have to talk about that in the future. But
Yeah.
it's amazing because it's people in those communities just act as our extended staff and they volunteer their time to organize a show and we guide them through every step of the way. So it's neat to just see we've had over 750 people tell their stories on our stages. And so we keep growing and we shot a short film, a short documentary film last year, and that's on our YouTube channel. And it's just the people who are part of this movement, not only the storytellers, but like you and your husband and your family that have come to our events and support the movement. Everyone is what makes this what it is. I mean, it was just an idea 5.5 years ago, 6 years ago, and now it's this, and it's been really special.
Right. No, I know. It's wonderful. Yeah, what you're doing. So you said like I understand now like that storytelling, the fact that we talk about our story, other people um, react in a way of asking more questions, even telling their own story. So I assume that you think that the power of storytelling is also relevant for women or fathers who's been through a postpartum mood disorder.
Yes, for sure. I think, yeah, I think people are scared. I think people tend to be scared to talk about postpartum issues with either the father or the mother, but because men can go through these issues too
Yeah.
postpartum. But I think they're scared to talk about it, and I was too in the beginning because you have a baby and it's supposed to be the happiest time of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's so shocking when you have a baby. Like it's just changes your whole world, and so we need to just talk about that. This is something that I think the statistic is like 1 in 7 women go through a postpartum issue. I don't know the exact. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
what I've read, I think what I've read is that 1 in 5, like that includes like when you're pregnant and postpartum.
okay. Okay. I think the
Period.
postpartum specific statistic, I believe, is 1 in 7 women can experience
Mm-hmm.
a postpartum issue. So it's very common. And I think what's happening in the US, that a lot of um, advocacy groups are educating physicians, not only, psychiatrists, they know, but like
Mm-hmm.
pediatricians who see the mom right after the baby's born, they have the mom come in and usually the dad goes in. So, but it's training them to ask the right questions. And so, and I think just as a community and a society, we need to just be on the lookout and just be asking the right questions to moms that are in the postpartum period to help.
Yes. So I think there's more work done, like to educate more the population and then the medical community as well. But I know that's one of my something I want to do too, to talk more about it, and also to the medical system as well. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but one day I would like to be more involved too, because in my experience, okay, it's 9 years ago, 9.5 years ago, but still we went to the emergency and didn't know what I was going through.
Yeah.
And I spent the night overnight, and then they were ready to send me home. And I was just right in the middle of a manic episode with psychotic symptoms and panic attacks. It was a whole bunch of things at the same time. But since physically they didn't find anything wrong, because I was like in pain because I thought I had a blood clot in my leg. I was in excruciating pain. And it was just an hallucination, like a tactile hallucination. That was not real because they did the test, the how do you call that, like ultrasound or whatever, to look, and there was nothing. So when the physical test showed nothing, well, the doctor just told me, well, you can go home, like just tell yourself everything is fine, like it's in your head. Like I didn't know exactly how he said it, but it was something like everything is fine, so tell yourself that it's okay. So I was like, oh my goodness. And my midwife was there. So my midwife kind of knew that she had seen me, and she knew that something was not normal. So she's the one who, she didn't say anything when the doctor was there, but after she said, do you want me to get some more help for you? Because are you ready to go home? I said, no, I'm not ready to go home. So she's the one who put me in touch with a social worker, who put me in touch with a psychiatrist. And then the psychiatrist, it didn't take long that after like talking with me, he figured out what was wrong and gave me the diagnosis.
That's
so it
so
made
good.
me
Midwife was there.
totally, because if not, I was going back home. And yes, I don't know where would that have led? I don't know. So I was lucky. But it made me realize, like, hey, I was in the hospital, even the emergency, and then the doctor after didn't know. So I guess they didn't ask as you said, they didn't ask the right questions to find to screen me. Or so I don't know. Like, it's been 9 years. Is it better today? Are the doctors over there more aware? But one thing I did when I left the hospital, I spent a week at the hospital, and I was not in the psychiatric part. They kept me on neurology because actually I was breastfeeding, and it was going well, and I wanted to keep breastfeeding. So they said, okay, you cannot be in a psychiatric ward because it's too well with the baby. It's not. They told me it would have been a little bit dangerous for the baby to be there. So they kept me in neurology ward, and then So at the end I told the nurse, I said, I would like you to talk more to your staff about me, because at first the nurses didn't know what I was having as well. So it was a little bit difficult, like, for them to know exactly what I was going through. But as the week went by and they saw my diagnosis and they saw me improving as well, they were a lot more understanding. So that's something I told the nurse in charge of the department, to say, hey, talk about it. Talk about postpartum mood disorder symptoms to your staff. So who knows, because maybe one day there's another woman like me who will be there, and it's always good to know, the symptoms. And so we'll see how it goes. Any other thing you would like to say? Or
I just appreciate you taking the time to have me on your show, and I hope it's helpful to someone out there. And the more we can get these stories out and share, the better our world's going to be. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing as well.
I will.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenny.
You're welcome. Bye.
You like my videos? And you care about my mission to speak openly about postpartum mental health? You can help me make it happen by subscribing to my channel and sharing my videos with others. Just click on subscribe. I also created a Patreon account to help you contribute directly to my mission. Interested? Just click on the link below my video, which will direct you to my Patreon page. Then, click on Become a Patron and join my exclusive community. Thanks to you, I can continue to invest time and energy to produce and then present you quality videos on a regular basis. Do not forget to take a look at the benefits you can get in exchange. I thank you for your interest in my channel, and I'm already grateful to you for taking the time to look at its content and share it with others.